this in your back camera. Go back now. Yeah? This is your camera. For help me carry and come back.
Of the Finance Committee of the Senate. My name is Zainab Ahmed, Minister of Finance. I have here with me today two permanent secretaries and also CEOs of some of the agencies under the Ministry of Finance, and I want to pass the microphone to them so that each will introduce himself. Let me, on behalf of Ministry of Finance and its agencies, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss our budget proposals with you. We have prepared reports, and also just to mention that I was the one that invited DMO and Peter to come. Just thought that maybe if some issues arise, that they might be here also at hand, knowing that they have different oversight committees. So we appreciate your accommodation. The process we have planned, Mr. Chairman and members, is that we have a summary report. There is a report that is circulated. I hope you have copies. And I'm looking at page 1 of the report. So page 1 of the report is an overview of the 2018 budget performance of the Federal Ministry of Finance. This report includes a summary of the Accountant General's Office as well as the Investment Securities Tribunal. The Federal Ministry of Finance headquarters has a total budget of 2018 of 3.633 billion, and this includes personnel of 1.2, overhead 1.3 billion, and capital of 978 billion. During this period, at least as at 25th of March, the actual releases that have been made to the ministry are shown on column 2, and the total releases are 2.775 billion, and this includes 1.1 billion for personnel, 913 million for overhead, as well as 667 million for capital. The actual expenditure that has been incurred from the amounts released is shown on column, the next column, and the total spend is 2.310 billion naira. This represents 76.37% of the amount that is budgeted and 83.27% of the amount that is released. Mr. Chairman, this means that our personnel spending has been almost 100% of the amount released. Overhead was 99.29% of the amount released, but the total releases for overhead comes to 66.67%. This is so because what we have been able to do was to release 8 months overhead out of the 12 months overhead for the year, and this is applicable to all agencies. Capital releases, on the other hand, was 68.2% of the budget. I have a similar summary for the Office of the Accountant General. The total budget for the Accountant General is 5.22 billion, out of which 4.441 billion has been released, and out of the amount released, 4.441 billion, representing almost 100%, has been utilized of the amount released. The IST, on the other hand, has a total budget of 669 million for 2018, out of which the actual releases is 493 million, and the actual expenditure from the amount released is 470.9 million, representing 95.44%.
Prime Minister, sorry, I think let's just because the IST budget, will be considered elsewhere. or they have only been 2019. I mean, in our head, it's unless the various amendments to the Procurement Act that the Senate has had to consider, unless they have never been seen through up to the stage of signing the amendment. Otherwise, from our own end, as a Senate, we think that the Procurement Act is even getting oversimplified. That the same questions and the same challenges and the same issues keep coming year after year. I mean, unless this gets sorted, then it's going to remain a problem. There was a time in the history of this country that releases were not releases. Then we had issues about what has been released, what is cash backed, and all that. That means it was possible to release 1 billion, and the only figure that is cash backed is about 200 million. But at the moment, under this government, there's no difference between what is released and what is cash backed anymore. Whatever figures that is released is cash backed. So we need to also follow it up. So the NPAs actually utilize this money. Because if you release a cash back and the money is not utilized, then there's nothing you've done. So I think that becomes an urgent assignment for the next assembly and the next executive. And we try to see how we can get on top of these. The other last issue is the issue of releases of overheads. Minister, I just want to find out how much discretion is involved. Because you said that we have released about overheads for 8 months outside some critical ministries and agencies. You mentioned NYSC, you mentioned Unity Schools, you mentioned, what defines them? What makes them deserve more overhead releases? That's number one. Number two, how much discretion do you think the ministry exercises in the course of determining how much more overheads a particular agency of government gets?
As you have shown in our presentation, let me just take some of the general questions and just brief the committee that the total budget performance of the federal government of Nigeria for 2018 for personnel is an average of 100%. And that is to say that salaries were paid as and when they're due, as well as pensions. The overhead releases, on the other hand, we out of 12 months we were only able to release 8 months, with the exception of some critical agencies like the NYSC, the Unity Schools, that we prioritize releases. So they had more than those 8 months. And also, even for the prisons, it's actually the prison ration, the food that is used to feed prisoners. And for the NYSC, of course, it is the allowances of the corpus. And then a few of the military agencies that have some critical functions that must not stop, those had slightly more than the 8 months releases. On capital, of the total budget of 2.8 trillion, as at the end of February, we had released 1.35 trillion, and this represents about 46% on the aggregate, the national budget. But a week ago, also, we had a cash management meeting, and there are some batch of releases that are under processing, and we're pushing the releases to 1.55. That will be about 55%. On revenue, the average revenue performance at the close of 2018 was about 55%. And because of that, we're not able to fund the budget as we would have loved to. But recall that capital budget is designed to be funded by borrowing. And we have been able to also do the borrowing as planned in the budget. So it is not possible to say that there are some agencies that will have gotten 100% of their budget, because revenues are short. Because revenues are short, we're not able to fund the budgets 100%. But despite the challenges of revenue, we have been able to push performance to 100% for personnel, or 100% for debt service, as well as about 66% for overheads, an average of 66% for overheads. There are some agencies that are more efficient in their capital spend than others. But what we've seen across board is there's a lot of delays due to procurement processes. The procurement processes is really hampering the effectiveness of the performance of the budget. And I really do hope that in the next assembly, the Senate will look at how to improve on our procurement process, maybe by way of some amendment to the Act to reduce the complexity of the process. BPP is having to review almost everything, and it takes a lot of time. You queue for a long time before approvals come, before you make progress. But I want to invite the Permanent Secretary to answer in more specific details the questions that are raised, followed by the Accountant General of the Federation. Thank you very much. The overheads are funded from revenue. And what we do every month when FAC is concluded is, first of all, settle salaries, settle debt service. So in months where FAC is high, we're able to do complete overhead releases. Where it is short, we are now limited to doing the ones that we call critical agencies. And I want to explain, for example, the NYC, for example, is like a salaries, allowances. And these are children that we have all over the country. And sometime in 2017 was determined that we must always make sure that they get their monthly stipends. Another item that is also a priority is the Empower. That is this 30,000 that is paid to Empower. It was also determined, and these are things that we normally discuss in EMT and determine what is critical. So Empower is also one of those critical spend that we make, because that is also akin to salaries. The prison rations also is very important, because the prisoners need to be fed on a monthly basis. So it is only items like this that we take out and classify as critical. But otherwise, the determination of what needs to be paid is dependent on the revenue balance that is available after we have paid salaries and after we have paid debt. Then we apply to overheads. And simply put, overhead is always 1/12 of what is in the budget. And even for these critical agencies, when we're releasing for others, we back out that initial amount that is provided to pay them the balances for the month. So it doesn't go beyond what is appropriated.
Okay, thank you. I think